Coming up on Cronkite News, efforts to increase access to the ballot box, especially for those with disabilities. We'll tell you what's being done.
Plus, controversy over the Dignity Act, why some say this immigration reform bill costs too much for those who are seeking help.
Later on Break It Down, we talk about the virtual community known as Black Twitter and how members use the digital space to fight injustice and promote social issues.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Anna Campbell.
And I'm Kelly Donahue. Thank you for joining us.
1 in 4 U.S. adults live with a disability, the largest minority group in America. They are a large voting bloc and one that could be especially impacted by a number of election bills moving through the Arizona legislature. Mia Marquez spoke with voters with disabilities to see the effect election changes could have on them and how they're working to increase voter accessibility.
George Garcia has always known voting from a disability angle. He says any voting changes could create new challenges for voters like him.
A lot of people with disabilities are not able to get to polling stations. They lack transportation. They may not have the ability to wait in line for a long time.
One bill making its way through the state legislature aims to limit drive-up voting or drop-off boxes unless proof of disability is provided.
I think looking at some of these bills, it's really important to ask the question of, okay, does this legislation, does it allow voters to vote as independently as possible? So when we're talking about voters with a disability, it's really important, and there are federal laws in place where they have the right and the opportunity to be able to vote as independently as possible.
Independent voting is a key concern for voters with disabilities. One bipartisan bill intends to increase privacy by providing a remote accessible vote-by-mail system for visually impaired voters.
I think that voters with disabilities would like to know that the polls are ready for them. Having the machines that they need to use that have the accessible features like the ability to use a headset to listen to the ballot and make their choices, or have large print on the screen so that they can see it better.
Advocates say that providing voter education also empowers voters with disabilities to feel confident as they head to the polls.
You know, everybody's going to be impacted differently, and I think that's why voter education is so important, so they can understand what the rules, because the rules for each election do change.
Based on the number of election-related bills in the legislature, the voting process in the next election could look different. In Phoenix, Mia Marquez, Cronkite News.
As election bills move through the Arizona legislature, voters with disabilities will continue to monitor how any changes could affect them. The Arizona Senate has voted on a measure banning gender reassignment surgeries for minors. Republicans approved the measure in a 16-12 party line vote. The bill bans irreversible gender reassignment surgeries for patients under the age of 18. It's a scaled-back version of an earlier proposal that would have banned gender-affirming healthcare, including hormone therapy and puberty blockers. Advocates for transgender youth say decisions about healthcare should be left up to children, their parents, and their doctors. But supporters of the measure disagree, saying children should not undergo irreversible surgeries.
In the statewide divide over abortion laws, one Republican in the Arizona House has helped stop an Arizona ban on abortion pills. The bill that unexpectedly failed would have eliminated the manufacturing and prescription of medication that would cause an abortion. This choice is used by half of the people who have abortions in the state. It is one of the 2 major anti-abortion bills in the Republican-controlled legislature this year.
It is an immigration reform bill that promises dignity to the undocumented community. In Arizona, some activists are not convinced that this is the best proposal. Cronkite News reporter Reina Preciado explains what else the proposal offers and why it is not well received by some sectors.
This is Republican Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar from Florida. She announces in Spanish her immigration reform plan she calls the Dignity Act. Karina Ruiz is the executive director of the Arizona Dream Coalition Act. She opposes this immigration reform bill.
I don't understand how that could be dignifying.
The bill includes a 10-year program that would grant temporary legal status, work authorization, and protection from deportation. Participants would have to obtain health insurance and pay a $1,000 yearly fee for 10 years.
This does not recognize the fact that immigrants contribute to the country already. So on top of the contributions that we do in taxes, they want to penalize us over a decade.
At the end of the 10-year period, participants would have the option of receiving an indefinitely renewable 5-year dignity visa, which would maintain their work authorizations and legal status, or of participating in a 5-year redemption program. The redemption program requires participants to learn English and U.S. civics and make contributions to the United States Worker Fund or complete 200 hours of community service.
That would be over 15 years. After 15 years, you could just become a legal resident, and it doesn't even talk about pathway to citizenship.
ASU Associate Professor Alexander AVINA believes the system only uses immigrants.
So on the one hand, this is something that it's a common sentiment you hear, at least in my family. It's like they want us for our labor, but then they expect us to leave.
Phoenix resident Erlinda Calderon has been living in Phoenix undocumented for over 10 years. She is skeptical of promises.
¿A quién le debemos de creer si el mero, como decimos, nuestro presidente nos lo prometió, no está haciendo nada por empujar una reforma migratoria?
The bill also requires 2% of undocumented migrant salaries to fund the border. In Phoenix, Raina Preciado, Cronkite News.
Congress passed the last immigration reform in 1986. President Ronald Reagan signed it into law on November 6, 1986.
Turning now to the crisis in Ukraine, President Joe Biden and members of NATO will send thousands of troops to protect allies in Europe. This is the first time the NATO response force has been used to defend NATO allies and is expected to involve land, sea, and air power. Meanwhile, Russian forces are closing in on Ukraine's capital. Sources say there have been airstrikes on cities and military bases around the country. There were hopes for negotiation to end the conflict, but talks broke down. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is calling for the U.S. to impose more sanctions against Russia. President Biden has nominated KETANJI Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court, setting in motion a historic confirmation process for the first Black woman to sit on the highest court in the nation. The decision comes after a month-long search by the president, who vowed to nominate a Black woman to the bench. Brown Jackson currently sits as a judge for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. This is the president's first Supreme Court pick after Justice Stephen Breyer announced his retirement last month. The Senate Judiciary Committee has praised the selection of Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court and says they will begin a formal investigation of her nomination right away. In the 50-50 Senate, all Democrats will need to stay united to confirm Biden's nominee.
Today, Governor Doug Ducey spoke about his priorities for the year, talking about K-12 education, trade with Mexico, and accelerating the economy. Cronkite News reporter Liz Flores was at the event and joins us with details.
Another item on the governor's agenda, conserving water. It's especially important this year as the state faces a reduction in its share of Colorado River water. This morning, Governor Doug Ducey met with President and CEO of Valley Partnership, Cheryl Lombard, at the Phoenix Country Club. They discussed the plan on investing monies from the State General's Fund. Governor Doug Ducey says he wants to ensure the state has water for the next 100 years.
There's going to be $1 billion put into an Arizona Water Authority that is moving through the legislature. There's a number of potential solutions around water. Desalination is one of them. The $1 billion will have flexibilities to address Arizona's long-term water needs, and it's a significant investment.
Governor Doug Ducey says that agriculture and farming are essential to the economy of Arizona. He also says this industry has diversified because of the drought and are making a good use of water. In the newsroom, Liz Flores, Cronkite News.
The Phoenix Police Department is expected to make some changes in the near future because of staffing shortages. Phoenix Police Chief Jerry Williams says the department will move 108 police officers to patrolling positions. That means after the changes, Phoenix Police will have about 1,200 officers in that role. The Cactus Park and Maryvale Estrella precincts are among those that will get some of that help. Williams said the department's response time is longer than expected and that within the last year, They saw a rise in emergency calls of almost 10%.
A recent report from ASU's Morrison Institute details that racial inequities in homeownership are continuing throughout the state. The report examined recent census data that shows African Americans own homes 36% less than their white counterparts, mainly due to years of housing discrimination. It lists displacement as one of the factors contributing to the gap in homeownership. One example here in Arizona was the construction of Interstate 17, which cut through South Phoenix neighborhoods with primarily Black and Latino residents. The report calls on several policy solutions, such as removing race from mortgage applications and increasing affordable housing stock.
A bill aimed at enticing filmmakers to film TV shows and movies in Arizona is advancing through the state legislature. The state Senate approved the bill yesterday with bipartisan support. If passed, it could generate up to $150 million in tax credit for filmmakers to come to Arizona. Supporters of the bill say it would create many jobs in the production, hotel, and restaurant industries, while critics argue that the tax credit is not necessary. Tax credits aimed at drawing filmmakers from California have been growing in popularity.
This weekend's weather will be picture perfect. Things are finally going to warm up this weekend after a couple of chilly days. Luke Vickery joins us from the Cronkite News Weather Center with more.
Good afternoon, Arizona. Yes, higher temperatures are in the forecast soon, but presently right now across the west, you can see pretty steady conditions, but it's not a similar story when you look across the east. You can see a little storm system over here towards the New York-Boston area. And of main concern right now is a storm system that's actually brewing up in eastern Texas that's going to make its way off the east coast in the next coming days. But as we look towards the big picture for Arizona right now, we're going to have high pressure move in off the west coast that's going to dissipate above us pretty quickly, actually. But better news is on the way. That warmer temperatures are really going to come in when this high pressure system comes up and brings those really warm temperatures up in our area. And that's actually going to stay and maintain all the way until Wednesday, when we have a low pressure system come in on Thursday that's going to drop our temperatures down a little bit, but keep us more towards the seasonal averages for this time of year. But as we look into the evening, 60 degrees is what we're going to see towards sundown, and as we move later into the evening, 54 degrees, more jacket style weather if you were going out towards that 10 p.m. later evening time. Now, as we look at high temperatures for the valley, 70 degrees is what we can expect in the valley, upper 30s, mid 40s for the higher elevation areas, and then 67 degrees down towards Tucson. Now, as we look at our 8-day forecast, on Monday is really when we're going to see it start heating up, and on into Wednesday, 88 degrees, about 15 degrees above our average for the season right now. And that's where we're going to peak for next week. In the Cronkite News Weather Center, I'm Luke Vickery.
I'm Hayden Weber. Coming up after the break, I'll have your Cronkite Sports Report. We're talking about the MLB lockout, some of its consequences for the Valley, next.
Cronkite School of Journalism with the opportunity to gain real-world experience in the newsroom. At Cronkite News, our students produce professional content for audiences by taking on all roles, whether they be reporting, anchoring, producing, or studio production. Each department gives students first-hand professional newsroom experience. For more information, visit cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Welcome back to Cronkite News. I'm Hayden Weber, and this is your Friday Sports Report. It's day 85 of the MLB lockout with no end in sight. MLB says opening day will be delayed and regular season games will be canceled if there's no deal by Monday, February 28th. With spring training already in the balance, Cronkite News reporter Anya Rogers looks at the economic toll the lockout will have in the Valley.
After 2 seasons filled with unusual circumstances, the Cactus League was hoping this year would bring a normal season with full capacity. However, a delay to the spring training season is causing a third year of economic impact on local businesses and the Cactus League itself.
2018, it was a $644 million total impact to the state's economy. In 2020, we're in the process of doing that same economic impact study. And when the season was canceled on March 12th, we saw that the impact was reduced to $363 million. So it was basically a $300 million reduction as a result of the partial season.
Obviously in the stadium, but also the just like I said, the hotel rooms and the rental cars and and just people going out to eat when they're here, they're just canceling their plans because there's no answer. So that's the hardest part. There's no date in sight right now.
Like fans, stadiums are going day by day. Jerry says that there's stadium, security, and signage ready. They're ready to start right now, and it could still be okay if the season starts by March 6th. In the meantime, all they can do is their best to communicate information and updates to fans.
We're praying we'll start that March 6th week, because if we do that, we got some big games with Cubs, with Dodgers, with Diamondbacks, that we could obviously fill some pretty good numbers. And one other thing is because the last couple of years have been so limited, people are ready to come watch baseball.
Businesses and fans are hoping that spring training will soon begin at some capacity, followed by an on-time start to the regular season. In Scottsdale, Anya Rogers, Cronkite News.
Cactus League games were scheduled to start tomorrow. Opening day of the regular season is slated for March 31st. From the diamond to the hardwood, the Suns won their first game back from the All-Star break last night, beating Oklahoma City by 20. It was the Suns' first full game without All-Star Chris Paul, but that didn't slow down the Suns and Devin Booker, who had 25 points and a career-high 6 steals.
We've been here before, and, I knew it was going to be a different look. The balls, we didn't make many shots early, but, I think we got some good shots. So, we just want to hang our hat on the defense end and make it tough on them. And, when we do that, we don't have to run plays. We can just get on transition. I think we're at our best then.
The win makes it 8 in a row for the Suns, who take on the New Orleans Pelicans tonight. It was a big night for college basketball in Arizona, as both Arizona and Arizona State's men's and women's basketball teams saw some Pac-12 action. ASU women lost to USC 60-58 after a crazy buzzer-beating 3 by USC's Allison Mira to take the lead as time expired. There was also heartbreak down in Tucson as the 12th-ranked Arizona Wildcats were crushed at home 64-46 by the unranked UCLA Bruins. The men's side was a different story. The Sun Devils and the Wildcats both trounced the Mountain Schools in their games last night. The Sun Devils beat Colorado by 17, while the Wildcats won by 20 against Utah. And that's it for today's Cronkite Sports Report. Back to you, Kelly and Anna.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. Break It Down is next. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.